All right, welcome to the Latest.com show. I'm Igor Deris. Joining me, he's a military vet and Latest.com senior political analyst from Pittsburgh, Josh Patton. And he's a 24-year veteran of the U.S.
Howdy.
State Department and the author of We Meant Well from New York, Peter Van Buren. So it's been quite the 3 days. On Friday, the Washington Post published the audio that we've all seen by now, Trump bragging about grabbing pussy and kissing women without consent. That was quickly followed by a massive wave of Republicans denouncing and unendorsing Trump, with many calling for him to drop out of the race a month out and let feminist leader Mike Pence take over. Trump immediately went on the offensive by pushing the Bill Clinton as a rapist narrative, which is a bold move by someone who's been accused of rape by multiple women. Yesterday, before the debate, Trump invited the entire the reporter pool to check out his debate prep, which turned out to be Trump flanked by 3 women who accused Bill Clinton of rape and sexual harassment, and 1 woman who was raped by a man that was represented by Hillary Clinton when she was a lawyer. He brought it up very early in the debate, accusing Bill of being the worst abuser of women. What followed was maybe the ugliest debate we've ever seen, with Trump dismissing his own locker room comments and then basically just heckling Hillary throughout, threatening to throw her in jail when he becomes president, which is an outcome that's becoming less likely by the second. Really no one, though, looked good coming out of that debate except, of course, national hero Ken Bone. So this morning, Paul Ryan distanced himself from the Trump campaign to focus on the races the GOP can actually still win, basically conceding that it's Hillary's election now. The first poll to come out since Pussygate has Hillary up by 11 points and up 14 in a two-way race. Josh, Trump had a chance to speak for the first time to 100 million people. He had such low expectations, he couldn't help but exceed them, but is there anything did he actually do anything, can he do anything to stop the bleeding now, or is this just going to be a landslide of massive proportions that no one's going to be able to stop?
Here's the thing. Trump is in a very weird position, obviously. But one of the sort of, I think, stories that happened in this big news weekend that maybe went under the radar because it was more about money and less about pussy, was that the RNC has, sort of basically, they've ceased their victory fund operations, essentially meaning that they are not going to be fundraising for Trump anymore. They're just going to focus on the down ballot ticket, which is interesting.
Was that the whole operation, or was that just the mail operation? I wasn't too sure what happened there.
I've been hearing different things. There was a report about the mail operation. That was an email obtained by Politico. And then there was another report from a Wall Street Journal reporter who said an RNC official told him that Reince Priebus, after meeting with Trump, instead of going to Wisconsin, they spent the day in New York together. And apparently after that, Reince Priebus said that pretty much all fundraising is going to stop for Trump. If that is eventually confirmed, what that means is and probably what this means for the get out the vote effort is that they're going to focus on people who will vote for Senator Marco Rubio, Senator Pat Toomey, Kelly Ayotte, which means they would also turn out people who are willing to split the ticket, meaning vote for Hillary, but vote for Republican legislators, which is bad for Trump because essentially they will be, part of Hillary Clinton's get out the vote campaign will be the RNC. I do think Trump is going to be able to limp to the finish line financially, though. He may have to put more of his money in, but his success with small donors thus far should continue because they're probably not maxed out on their donations. And as social media has shown, there are a contingent of Trump loyalists out there. So while he might be all right financially to finish the campaign, he's going to be working against the RNC when it comes to getting out the vote. And I think that sets up as a big of a landslide as a hyper-partisan country like this can put forward.
Peter, last night was the first time Trump was really able to, respond to the not the allegations, to the tape and the fallout. Did he help himself any? Can he help himself any?
It's interesting because there are 2 stories going on here. One that really, really matters and one that is just a sad clown show. I mean, the sad clown show is that now everybody in America is in agreement that Trump is a sexist, racist douche, which
Good.
among an awful lot of people was not heavily a question in contention for the last year and a half. But now, yes, we all agree that he is a sexist, racist douche. Confirmed. The other issue that's going on here, of course, is what was buried by the news of the, as the pussy grabbed all the headlines. And that were two things that came out on Friday. One is that the transcripts of Hillary's speeches to Goldman Sachs and some other financial organizations were leaked out through WikiLeaks. And they show her to be a disingenuous liar who's totally in bed with Wall Street. And the other was a very odd set of statements out of the Director of National Intelligence and the Department of Homeland Security, basically accusing the Russians of planning to throw the election in Trump's favor by hacking in. Neither of these really got much noise out of the debate last night, meaning because we were all tangled up in what naughty words Trump said and some other silliness. Trump mentioned, I believe, once about these transcripts, and it was something that got all tangled up in Hillary's review of Steven Spielberg's old movie Lincoln. And then the thing about the Russians interceding in the election, that, again, passed by very quickly when Hillary at some point accused Donald Trump of, having a pussy-grabbing, homosexual, horse-fucking relationship with Vladimir Putin. And there's big stories. Hillary Clinton is going to be president of the United States. I don't think there's any doubt at this point in time. I mean, she could probably die and she would still win the majority of votes. And then, the Electoral College would have to sort that out. But the fact that she is, in fact, someone who is willing to say anything in public to get elected is also now not something that's in dispute. And the fact that she and the White House are willing to collude with this silly, silly conspiracy theory about the Russians, trying to throw this election says an awful lot about what's left of democracy here. All that got lost in the debate. If Trump was a more skillful politician, he could have actually brought that stuff up and it would have been a very effective set of attacks against Hillary. Would have been enough, I don't know, but Trump isn't that skillful a politician.
Josh, do you think that's a silly conspiracy theory that the Russians are actively involved in the U.S. elections to try to sway the result?
It's a conspiracy theory just by definition, because it would be a conspiracy and there's really no proof beyond what the government said. However, I do think it's not silly. The Russians and their, Russia's activities and sort of hacking and things like that are pretty well known. And I remember even seeing in the research about this that there was a report from 1999 that said that the Russians were, exploring cyber attacks as a way to, influence elections, hacking emails, even though it was much less common back then. So I don't know, and maybe I'm not cynical enough. I don't know, but I don't think that the Director of National Intelligence and the intelligence agencies would engage in that sort of accusation if it was just politics. I think maybe Vice President Biden might say it, you might have, but I don't know. I don't think that's the case. And I feel like that we all owe Mitt Romney an apology because we laughed in 2012 when he said that Russia was one of America's greatest threats in terms of foreign policy threats. When we were all thinking terrorism was, and still today, in Trump's answer about Syria, he said that defeating ISIS is the most important thing. But, we've learned, in the past 6 months or so that Syria is basically now a proxy war between Russia and the United States. And that is troubling on a sort of global scale, and it's the kind of enemy, it's a nation state enemy that we haven't seen since before the first Gulf War. So I feel like it's a very serious issue, and I'm concerned about it. And I think Peter's right. We definitely should have talked about it more, and it deserves much more press scrutiny. The WikiLeaks thing, my favorite thing about that is that the transcript of the speeches, that email, was the Clintons doing Oppo research on themselves, and now that's out there. So they found the worst, parts of the speeches, put it all in one place conveniently for us to find now. And while the tape about Trump is a bit of a distracting, reality show type distraction, if it was just the first half, I would agree with Peter that it was silly. But the second half, the implication of Trump being the type of guy who would use his power and celebrity to, skirt the lines of sexual assault, maybe even cross them, or brag that he does it and doesn't actually do it, which I think is very interesting of an insight into his character. I think that's worthy of discussion. Perhaps not the frenzy maybe that has happened, but
we lost Peter.
I don't know what happened.
That's all right.
I think it was the Russians, man. I think it was the Russians. They were like, uh-oh, they're blowing this whole thing wide open.
Just throw that out. Tell us where you want us to pick up, Igor. I'm sorry.
Well, no, I mean, you brought up a good point. That's really the biggest irony of the Trump collapse from this video, is that it really buried the WikiLeaks thing. I mean, yeah, they mentioned the Abraham Lincoln thing yesterday, but there's a lot of parts in there. I mean, she was talking about open borders, open trade, supporting fracking. Peter, how damaging are the emails, do you think? And why don't you think Trump is hammering her on that instead of the Bill Clinton rape things from 2 decades ago?
Timing is everything in this. First of all, the timing of these WikiLeaks releases, the timing of the claim that basically everything bad that happens to Hillary is a Russian plot, and the timing of the release of the Billy Bush tape. I mean, the Billy Bush tape has been literally around for 11 years, and that surfaces on the same, within hours of the WikiLeaks release.
It was before the WikiLeaks release.
Yeah, and the idea that all of these things kind of just fell in one big lump over the course of an afternoon does bring up questions about accidents, coincidences, and timings. If these WikiLeaks emails had come out during, say, the primaries, when Bernie was hitting Hillary hard on Goldman Sachs, and when people were actually paying attention to her ties to Wall Street, they could have been devastating. They could have possibly knocked her out of the race, or certainly impacted severely the race.
They definitely go to the heart of what Bernie's argument was against her.
Yes, absolutely. And we also didn't have the kerfuffle about whether the Russians are behind all this to soften the blow there. And there wasn't anything, Donald Trump on the sideline to also pull the media's attention away. So, yeah, if they had been in the spring, this would have been devastating. If they had fallen without the Trump tape, they would have been very damaging. I think the real problem here is that Trump is simply not a skillful politician. He doesn't understand how to work with an organization to use this information, how he needs surrogates out there getting the information out so that the majority of Americans know what is going on. Then in the debate, he can go in and pinprick on particular issues, knowing that there are surrogates out there who have prepped the ground for him and who will follow up and help Americans understand what really happened. You can't just throw this stuff out there and expect voters to actually pay attention and understand. So the information in there is very significant. It tells us a lot about the person who's going to be the next president, and a lot about her very cozy ties with donors and Wall Street, and how the financial crisis to come will be a nasty one. But I think it's, at this point in time, too late and too much in the hands of a guy who doesn't really understand the gift that someone tried to give him.
The Trump campaign has had scandal after scandal. He's said really horrific things about a lot of people. Josh, are you surprised that there was so much immediate fallout from this video, which isn't significantly worse than a lot of the things he has been able to weather?
See, I kind of disagree with that for the point that, that he's insinuating that he, sexually assaults
He's been
women.
accused of attempted rape and rape. I mean, we've been covering the Jill Harth story for
Well,
months.
that's true. That's true. And but it's damning because it's him saying that he did what, Miss Harth and Tiffany and some of the other claims out there have been about his behavior. It's from his own mouth. So I think that's why this was such a big deal. In terms of the other stuff that he says and being able to weather it, I think that it was because, people are willing to accept a certain level of scumbaggery from Trump. But when it comes to the, it helps, the narrative helps that he's up against a female candidate, that he's been accused of sexism forever. I mean, there is definitely a buildup. If this had dropped in, say August, if this had been the third scandal of the Trump campaign instead of maybe the last, who knows? Maybe he could have gotten over it. I don't know. But I definitely agree with Peter that he is so politically inept that he doesn't understand that, when you are accused of sexual assault, continuing to talk about accusations of sexual assault aren't helping your case. In a way, again, if I had been advising the Trump campaign, I would have told him to, when asked about the tape, to, pivot to invasions of privacy so you could bring up, like, say, the hacked emails of Colin Powell or Clinton campaign manager or chair John Podesta, and then, pivot that way. Now, whether that would have stood, because Anderson Cooper seemed determined to make him acknowledge what he said. But again, that's how a smart political person would have handled it. Trump instead goes with hyperbole and deflection, and he looked like every weasel who's ever tried to get out of trouble by pointing fingers at other people. And I don't think that, for what undecideds or swayable voters are still out there, I don't think that endeared Trump to anyone.
Look at the way he used the term locker room talk. That was unbelievable. If I was someone advising him, I would have put a gun to my head at that point. The thing you do is you apologize, you explain that I have changed in 11 years. That's not me. That, kind of the very minimal you have to say, and then you shut up. And, Anderson Cooper could say whatever he wants, and then that just goes away. You can't keep throwing another little snack out there for the media and saying, well, this is how people talk in the locker room. Simply does that. It's very amateur stuff on his part. I'm sure there's Republicans all over the United States trying to figure out exactly how they ended up where they are here today. And again, no one has anyone to blame but themselves. Trump has never, as we've talked about over and over again, Trump has never done anything but be Trump. And he's dug this hole for himself, and it's over. Hillary Clinton will be the president of the United States.
The other thing that's amazing.
Oh, that had to hurt, didn't it, Peter? That hurt, didn't it?
Like I said, guys, when I get hauled off by the stormtroopers, I hope you'll, send me paper copies of Latest.com in the mail.
I will. Hunger Games salute.
Thank you.
Well, let's talk about the debate for a minute, because it was ugly. Maybe most worth mentioning is Trump threatened to appoint a special prosecutor to throw Hillary Clinton in jail. Mike Pence this morning said that was Trump's best moment in the debate. Josh, what does it say when Trump goes like full evil dictator, and the guy who's supposed to be representing like the principled conservatives on the ticket is like, fuck yeah?
I don't know. I mean, the whole Pence thing really blows my mind, because, him throwing Pence under the bus about Syria, the Pence canceling campaign events. It's stunning to me that he's still willing to, put his arms around, not the worst thing Trump has said this week, but one of the things that you would think he would try to explain away. But I do think that he's playing on the type of Hillary Clinton hate that is, permeated the political culture. I mean, there are people who are going to go vote for her on election day that probably agree that she should, at least have gone to court rather than, I don't know about full-on incarceration, but I bet you there are people who will vote for her on November 8th that would think she maybe should have stood in front of a judge or a jury for what happened with her emails or, pick your scandal. So I think we're in a very weird place, and I wonder if Pence is trying to still, toe the party line, because if he jumped ship from the ticket, he could arguably be blamed for Trump's loss later on, say 2020 when he's trying to mount his own campaign. So I think he's trying to walk the line between being principled and a loyal soldier. And even though it is, dictator stuff, no Republican has ever lost votes for saying bad shit about Hillary Clinton.
Now, to be fair to dictators, they usually don't appoint special prosecutors.
That is true.
I'm not disagreeing with what has been said about this. Trump did make this promise about a special prosecutor at some point during the primaries. This is not a new line for him. But it's a little overblown. I think it was Dana Bash on CNN who was saying, this is like Stalin and Hitler. Well, she knows nothing about history. Dictators have people taken out in the backyard and shot in the head. Trump's argument that this thing should have come through some kind of open legal process, if he had said it in some way like that, it would have made a little sense. He's, without understanding it probably, he's trying to grab those I can't vote for Hillary people and give them some reason to vote for him, the negative vote, if you will. And I suspect what Josh said about Pence, of all that, the loyal soldier, Pence has got to balance everything. He can't be seen as a weasel by his own.
Just this morning, he basically threw himself under the bus, saying that even though Martha Raddatz quoted him verbatim to Trump, he basically said, "Yeah, I agree with Trump."
Yeah, the guy's in one of those positions where what's he going to say? I'll just throw out there as an amusing sub point. The campaign event he canceled today was in New Jersey, and it was a $50 a head event. This was not going to raise enough money to pay bus fare there and back. So it was kind of pathetic in every possible sense. The thing about this, there's something to be said, and maybe we can find a way to seg into this at some point, about the way that debate was moderated and the way the media responded to it. This was not a dictator statement. Come on. Trump did not say he's going to have Hillary thrown into jail or imprisoned or shot or any of those things. He basically said, I want a way to let justice happen on this, other than the director of the FBI saying, yeah, man, there's a whole long list of stuff she did, but it's no big deal, so I got to go. Again, someone who actually understood the English language and how to use words would have done better with that. But I think we need to just back off a notch about this. I can't believe I'm going to say this, but this will be what the opposition research comes up with on me when I do it. Yeah. But, even the stupid shit he said with Billy Bush, come on. People say things like, kiss my ass, or, suck my dick, you bastard. I don't know that people literally mean to place your lips on my penis or buttocks. I think what some of the terrible words that Trump used and things he said, I do not believe were him saying, oh, I'm preparing to conduct a sexual assault, and here is the specific means of assault I intend to employ.
Well, I don't think anyone's actually mad at him for just using the word pussy. I think the problem is in the context of recounting his own behavior around women, he mentioned that as if it had happened.
Yeah. But Anderson Cooper's, the first words out of Cooper's mouth were basically, something about, didn't you commit a sexual assault, or weren't you bragging about it? It's just, we just kind of made a huge jump from a statement 11 years ago to sexual assault happening live right now on CNN. Again, I'm walking on very thin ice here, because I'm not trying to defend Donald Trump either for any of his statements, actually, for the entire course of his human existence. But what I am trying to do is point out the way that the media has abandoned any pretense of neutralness in this campaign. And that bothers me a lot, because Hillary Clinton is going to be president. There, I said it again. And if the media is not willing to look at her even kind of with a tiny bit of objectivity, it's going to be an even worse 4 to 8 years than simply having Hillary as president.
I mean, it's hard.
See,
you can't really be neutral. It's not even a neutral thing when you're discussing a person's statements about sexual assault. I mean, no matter, you can't really take sides in that scenario. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Josh.
Well, that's right. No, the one thing I really wanted to comment on, because there is a lot to sort of unpack in what Peter just said.
He just cost himself his 2020 bid.
I know. The good thing is we can scrub things from the internet now. I heard this thing, you can acid wash it. It's great.
They got genes like that. They're really cool.
I agree with Peter that the news media has abandoned being neutral, which I think is a good thing, because neutrality and objectivity are not the same thing. The neutral report on what Trump's said is what Peter just said, that yes, what he said was disgusting, but he was bragging to a D-list Bush, trying to sound like a tough guy who gets a lot of tail. And I would say that is a reasonable framing of it in a neutral way. But objectively, going up to, saying you can do anything you want when you're a star, you can do anything you want, you can grab them by the pussy. Objectively, that is a man describing sexual assault, an unwanted, sexual touching at the very least. So, objectivity and neutrality, I think, are two different things. And I think that's sort of the biggest challenge we faced this entire election, from our level up to the highest levels of the press, cable news, things like that, where they've conflated neutrality and objectivity, and they haven't known how to say, Trump is a liar of the highest caliber. And you know what I mean? Like there's no real vocabulary to discuss the way he lies and the way that he shifts things around. I mean, Mitt Romney talking about, people paying taxes, 47% paying taxes. You can fact check that and say, yes, it's true, but, some of them are rich, some of them are poor, some of them this and that. When Trump says that he didn't say, check out the sex tape, I mean, there's no way, you can't be, other than going, you fucking did. Like, there's no other way to address that kind of line. I think that's sort of the challenge we've had. And I feel like the press would be best served, and I feel like the electoral process would be best served by abandoning neutrality for objectivity. But that's a sort of high-minded philosophy thing about journalism that is a little far off the topic we were on.
Peter, what say you?
Like I said, the ice keeps getting thinner and thinner under me, because it starts to sound like I'm trying to defend Trump in some roundabout way.
We're just talking about the media's coverage of it.
Yeah, and so I think what we want to say is, look, here's what Trump said. Here it is. Listen to it, and pay attention to those words and do what you need to do with that information. That's sort of what a lot of the media's job is to convey information, particularly when we're talking about an election year, convey information to us about what's been said and done so that voters can decide if this is indeed the type of person they want as president. Again, Trump has never tried to hide from who he is. The other thing, though, is again going back to these. I'm not going to, play definition of word wars or something like that, because I think Josh has tried to sort these things out. But I mean, the idea of saying every piece of information seems to have equal value with every other piece of information. Well, here are tax returns from 22 years ago. Here's a video from 11 years ago. And just say, well, we've only got these couple of little pieces, so therefore these are what must be significant. I find a bit troubling in the abstract. I want to stop saying Trump's name, because it keeps coming back to making me feel like I'm defending him. But it's almost like
now you know how I felt when I was talking about Rubio, Peter.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've all had to do some pretty put our hands in some pretty nasty stuff as part of this campaign. But it's like an archaeologist. You go and you dig a hole and you come up with a couple of pottery shards and a Sanskrit tablet or something, and then you try to draw a conclusion about how everyone lived 5,000 years ago. The same thing where the media has gone such hog-ass wild over such small little snippets of reality. In this specific case, yes, Trump has shown us many times that these little snippets are in fact connected to who he presents himself as quite openly. But I grow weary and a little wary of this pattern in the media, where as we go forward in politics, I also am concerned about the idea that the media says that is a set of valid standards over here on one side, but they don't seem to apply it equally on the other side of the aisle. I wrote a story this week for Latest.com about some of Hillary's opposition research on Bernie Sanders. Made claims that he supported gang rape of women and things like, and some other things like that. And he wrote an essay in 1972 for a hippie newspaper in Vermont that was largely a piece of weird, just divorce guy fiction or something. But none of that was
guy fiction.
Yeah, and fan fiction to use Josh's.
Man, that was perfect.
But the idea of plucking these things out of the ether and inflating them into stories, that's really a product of our internet news age, where everything's got to be breaking, everything's got to fit in 140 characters, what have you. And it represents a real breakdown in the role that the media has really been expected to play in the national discourse, if you will. And I don't want to get too dramatic and start with the Hamilton lyrics again, but this is where
we can do it, man.
I can. I don't need to. The thing is that the idea is that the media was in fact given this role, and occasionally in American history has actually done it. But we've thrown that stuff way out the window. The decision is made that the story tonight is going to be everything Trump says is crazy in some degree whatsoever. Everything Hillary says is either neutral or, I'm looking around the internet, the words graceful, presidential, poised, brave, courageous, all those things. And then the rest of it is there. It's kind of like when you plot out a professional wrestling match. The guy in the black mask, everything he does is bad. The guy over here in the white mask, he's going to win in the end. Like that. It disturbs me a lot going forward. There's going to be a lot of Republican Democratic fussing and fighting going on when she becomes president. If the Republicans hold Congress, holy shit. Even if they don't, the minority Republicans will do everything they can to make this nasty. And I really just don't want to see this going forward as the way business in the media is going to be done vis-a-vis Hillary Clinton.
See, I think that I agree with you on some of that, because except the part, well, here, to take the stories from this weekend, the WikiLeaks thing and the Trump tape, you're definitely right in that they are two very different stories that require two different sort of attention spans. The Trump tape, all you need to do is watch the tape, hear him say it, and have a reaction. with the WikiLeaks stuff, that email about her speeches was 5,000 words long. And I mean, who's got time to read that? So, and when it comes to the Hillary Clinton story, the WikiLeaks story, I mean, whether you like her or not, there is nuance there. There is stuff to discuss. There's context. There's things to talk about, to frame the issue in a way that's honest to the subject matter. And who's got fucking time for? Yeah, who's got fucking time for that? Trump's saying pussy, and then the next thing you know, he's, it's a way more spectacle kind of driven thing, and that is bad that we keep, as the press, keep being drawn. But here's the thing: I also don't quite blame the press, because if we had written about WikiLeaks all weekend, all that would have happened is that Latest.com's traffic numbers would have dipped, because people would have gone elsewhere for the story. So it's the audience in a way that is shares some of the blame too, and that they keep being drawn to the spectacle stuff and not having the time or the patience to go into the sort of nuanced thing. The only thing I disagree with, though, is I don't believe that Hillary Clinton's press, maybe up until maybe the first debate, from the end of the con scenario, once Kellyanne Conway and them got hired, to the first debate, Trump was on good behavior, wasn't giving them that spectacle shit. So what did they do? They turned right to the FBI report about the emails, and it was a bad, 3 or 4 weeks for Hillary Clinton. So much so that her poll numbers dropped. I mean, no one was calling her, graceful or presidential when the FBI report came out. So I feel like that, there is a negativity in the press when it comes to Clinton too, but just in that, and I'm not saying it's bias or whether it is or it isn't, but it's there. I feel like it's not one side definitely playing for the other. However, once the debate happened, and then I think from now on, Peter's characterization might be right. But again, talking about neutrality versus objectivity, objectively, everything she does is inherently more presidential, graceful, poised, whatever, than Trump, because he is falling apart on the campaign trail. So to say that, is it bias? Is it, putting your thumb on the scale for Hillary, or is that objectively reporting on the state of the race? I think because the trust in the press is so low. I mean, a week or two ago, I did a story for Latest about how Gallup's annual tracking of the media found that 32%, less than a third of the people surveyed, trusted the press and trusted the media. And I think that what they're trying to do is, one, survive in a market that is a for-profit market, in a capitalistic market, but also still trying to find a way to get that trust back, to do the stories that people want, but do them in a way that is true to whatever their personal values are. And that may change whether you're Anderson Cooper or Megyn Kelly.
I tried today. I had a little free time because I actually have no friends. And I spent a fair amount of time purposely looking at a broad range of websites for commentary about the debate last night. There was not one that I was able to find that was parsing Hillary Clinton's statements. There were a lot that reported her statements. She said this, this, and this. There were a lot that pulled out some of the dramatic things she said about Trump and put those there. But I didn't find anyone that said, she said this about tuition, or she said this about energy, or she said this about Syria, and go into that and say, well, what does that mean? What is there? What is not? I found pages after pages after pages tearing apart everything Trump said from beginning to end. Let me give you an example, and this goes to the moderators last night as well. Hillary Clinton spoke out again about a no-fly zone over Syria. Well, good. She's been talking about that for a long time, and the world has changed since she started talking about it. A no-fly zone today would involve direct combat between the United States and Russia. If the United States said you cannot fly over Aleppo or over Raqqa or or over any place in Syria, the Russians would be very likely to challenge that, and the United States would have no choice but at some point to shoot down a Russian aircraft. I would have liked to have heard Martha Radich, allegedly the foreign policy expert, say something along those lines. Secretary Clinton, how would your no-fly zone account for the fact that this is emerging as a Russian-U.S. proxy war, and that the Russians would be objecting to and testing that no-fly zone? I would have liked to have heard that question last night, and I didn't. I would have liked to have seen some major news source, or even a lesser one, ask that question today. The New York Times didn't do it. The Washington Post didn't do it. God help us, CNN didn't do it. And that is a critical question. That is a policy decision that President Clinton will be facing very, very early on in her career. And I think that is a good example of where the media has dropped the ball in every sense of that word and has failed us, and instead went after Trump for whatever silly shit he was saying. At some point with Trump, I mean, a lot of it is just silly shit, and you just have to say, okay, it's silly shit. Let's keep going here. But that's not what we heard. She was allowed to get away with literally any statement she wanted, as long as it didn't have any word in it. And given the almost certainty that she's going to be running this country, I think we need to hear a little bit more. The fact that we didn't is where my concerns lie about the media and the moderators last night.
Well, there's a week and a half left until the next and last debate, should Donald Trump show up. Josh, what do you think Trump does these next 9-10 days? Is he just going to push the Bill Clinton as a rapist narrative? I don't even know what he has. There's nothing that he can possibly have in his back pocket that he can whip out now, because he would have done it already.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean...
He said whip it out. He said whip it out. I heard it.
Yes, it's true. I feel like that's it. That's the thing he does next, is actually whip it out. I will admit that, the Juanita Broaddrick, that was kind of the Dirty Tricks reality TV show A-Bomb, and it was a dud. Like, it didn't even register. Probably in part because of what Peter is talking about, this sort of national revulsion and inability to think about anything else.
The women that were there with Trump, those have nothing to do with Hillary, really. Even Juanita Broaddrick, who says that Hillary, quote, threatened her after Bill, whatever. She even admits that all she did was say, you did a great job on the gubernatorial campaign, and she perceived that as a threat. Kathy Shelton, who was the 12-year-old that was raped by the guy that Clinton's group was defending, the whole premise of that is basically built on, well, rapists shouldn't get legal counsel. Well, then, amend that part of the Constitution.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. There's definitely a lot there, and but the thing is remember how Trump knows spectacle. He knows media spectacle. That's the only sort of skill that he has. It was a weird thing that he did, but in the 2 hours before the debate started, no one was talking about the tape anymore. We were all talking about who Kathleen Wiley is and Kathy Shelton and all that. So that's the kind of thing I think that he's going to continue to try to do. It's what worked for him in the primaries, and the real sort of question is whether or not he believes his own hype. If he really believes that his strategy of being a dick in the media and going only on safe interviews and subtweeting people, if he thinks that's helping him, he's going to keep doing it. If he knows he's losing, he might up the wow factor because if he loses the election, at least he can win the ratings game. But I think we've all learned our lesson about trying to predict what Trump is going to end up doing, because he consistently is able to, if not surprise, shock you that he actually did what you thought he was going to do.
What Trump will do and what he should do, of course, what he will do is continue to try to find ways to make a bigger and louder noise. If he set himself on fire, he'd make the news. You can't ignore that. that will not help him. He'll just keep stepping on things and making himself look dumber and dumber as more and more Republicans abandon ship. What he probably should do at this point, and he doesn't have a lot of cards left to play, is literally shut the hell up. He should make some TV commercials and play those everywhere, make a few limited appearances in front of very friendly audiences.
I mean, you can't really keep a low profile when you're down 11 to 14 points 4 weeks out of the election. You really need to, catch up.
Well, except that the higher he raises his profile, the worse it is.
Yeah, I'm with Peter on this one, because if he went away, guess what would happen? We have nothing to talk about but Hillary Clinton. And I mean, Peter's correct. That is the sort of the strategy move. And once that narrative shifts, maybe you can eke your way back out to, keep doing the rallies, because that seems to work for him. Keep doing Hannity and Fox and Friends, and because I mean, even Romney, that's all he did towards the end of the campaign. That's not just a Trumpian strategy to only go to friendly media. And then see if the lens of the press keeps, shifts on Hillary. And that's, of course, with the caveat that nothing new comes out, Yeah. I mean, but already transcripts are leaking from The Apprentice. So I imagine that, I mean, it was, but it's just, like I said, I feel like,
yeah.
I got a question for the group if we have a moment. Let's talk about that sort of, something falling from the sky thing. Is there something? Let's just let your imagination run. Is there something that potentially could be in WikiLeaks about Hillary that you think really is big enough to be a game changer? I say no.
No, I mean, I'm sure there's something that would alarm some group of people, but unless they found a photo of her standing over Vince Foster's body, I don't see it.
Yeah, no,
my joke.
Yeah, no, I was being vaguely serious, but the Vince Foster thing was in the back of my mind. No, I mean, because you keep hearing WikiLeaks talking about, well, we've got something. Certainly, the U.S. government has accused Putin of trying to throw the election. I can't think of anything.
Hillary using racial slurs. Audio of Hillary using racial slurs from the past. I think that might do it, because her the support amongst black voters and Hispanic voters are her key to victory.
Let's not forget that she already ran a long campaign against Obama. I really feel like that might have been something that they found, and not to mention that she ran a whole bunch of other campaigns. It's not the first time a campaign's doing Oppo research on her.
Yeah, but
he said the imaginative. That was my...
Yeah, the WikiLeaks thing is different because it's like more recent things.
Yeah. But I mean, that would be one of the few things I think I could agree with, is if magically there was an email with Hillary using the N-word. But I mean, absent that, I think this one is over. Stick a fork in it. It's done.
Well, I mean, the only other thing I could think is that enough of that, because it all comes down to who's motivated. And if Hillary is like 15, not 15 points, because that's a guaranteed win, but like 7 points ahead in swing states, and voters just don't turn out, and, if Hillary doesn't turn out voters in PA, the Trump voters could take it,
If she's up by 14,
again,
she's win fucking
that's
Texas.
Like way... True. I mean, and I'm just saying that's the only thing that could possibly, I think, affect the race at this point. There's no going to be giant swing to Trump. Really the only way she could lose is if the people who vote for her don't show up.
Yeah.
The one other thing in the post-Pussygate poll that we were talking about earlier is that Americans, by a drastic margin, all of a sudden want the Democrats to also run Congress. The poll has a seven-point lead for Democrats to run Congress, which is the most it's been since the GOP shut down the government in 2009. Usually it's around 3 points, one way or the other. There's a lot of lawmakers that are, denouncing Trump, but they're also costing themselves a lot of Trump votes. I don't know. They're finding themselves in this weird position where you can't really climb out of it. So, Josh, do you think we're looking at a situation where not only now the Senate is in jeopardy, but maybe a legitimate run for that House majority is on the table? We're talking
I
about
think so.
obscene numbers.
Right. No. In fact, there was some analysis, and it was just one guy from Princeton, but he said that if Hillary's able to get more than 6% of the popular vote, win the popular vote by at least 6 points or more, the spread of voting should be enough to flip seats in the House, if not for a full majority, enough to make it like really tight. So I think that's a possibility, but this will be a real test of the trend over the past four elections or so of straight ticket voting. If people vote straight ticket like they've been this year, it could happen. The Senate, now to be fair, the Republicans in owning both the House and the Senate, they were already in a position where they had to defend. I think the Democrats, there was only a couple seats they could, like maybe 2 seats they could even possibly lose. And dozens of seats in swing states for Republicans to defend. So even if they had a great candidate and things were going their way, it still would have been a tough fight. With Trump just continuing to bring down the GOP brand, and the disendorsements that are happening now, I feel like it's a little too late for it to really have an effect. I feel like the Democrats will successfully be able to, with the type of voters that the Republicans brought in from between 2006 to 2010, enough to send them back to the Democrats. Because remember, these aren't partisan voters, we're assuming. These are voters who are about issues and wanting to get stuff done and just want things to fucking work. And the GOP is not making that argument very well before Trump. With him there, it could be, she could end up flipping not just the Senate, but making things real tight in the House. Now, gerrymandering notwithstanding.
The only caveat would be that a lot of, especially in the House, a lot of people are elected on local issues that are, way separate from big deals in Washington and Trump and Hillary. And so that would be the only thing I'd add, just as a little wrinkle to what Josh said. But yeah, I don't think it's an optimistic year for any Republican.
Yeah, in fairness, I think split ticket voting will win out. I think people will split the ticket.
You really think there's a lot of people that are going to vote Hillary and for a Republican Congress?
I think, again, especially if you look at never Trump Republicans, absolutely. They will, the plan for them has always been to either vote for someone else for president, like Johnson.
Those people are really tepid about, saying anything kind about Hillary.
That's true, and I'm saying they might just not even, not vote for president. But yeah. I don't know. This is a thing that is pure speculation, but I have a feeling that when, someone like John McCain goes into the voting booth, he will, until he dies, with all of his integrity and honor, will say that he never cast a vote for Hillary Clinton. But in that voting booth, I think he'd pull that lever just to, if not out of spite, if out of sense of, duty. So I think there's going to be Republicans who will vote. Remember how there were the people support Trump but don't want to admit it? I think that's happening for Hillary now. I think there's Republicans who will vote for Hillary to stop Trump, but would never admit it.
I don't believe those.
And I think they will split the ticket.
I don't believe that there are people who support Trump but won't admit it, at least in the polls. All right, well, next time we're going to be talking is after the next debate. You guys have any predictions for what Trump pulls out this time?
His penis.
His penis.
Yeah, I go with Josh.
You guys are stealing my prediction for the last two.
To try to say what might happen with Trump in 10 days, given what could break every single day in there, it's crazy. What I suspect is, if I have to really make a prediction, is in the next debate, Trump is going to realize it's all or nothing, and he will go not turn it up to 11, but turn it up to 12. He will probably start. He probably would start a fist fight with whoever's moderating the next debate.
It's Chris Wallace.
He'll have at that point. Yeah, at that point, I think he truly will understand he has nothing to lose. He'll toss out bones to his face and just say anything.
We joked about it for the first debate, but I think that, again, if the downward spiral continues, he might mutter bitch on stage. Because, again, he knows there's nothing else to do, and he knows that his supporters, who he will need their money when he's not president, will like that. So he might do something like that. I don't know. That's just me being ostentatious. I also think, though,
against it.
I also think that, again, if Trump isn't just, dominating all of the discussion and attention, I feel like that, especially because Chris Wallace is moderating this debate, I feel like Hillary's going to really be on the defensive. He's going to have some tough fucking questions for her. I feel like it'll be a rough debate for her, even if Trump doesn't show up. If he just sits catatonic on the stage.
If she's ahead in significant double digits by the next debate, and there's been a couple of, more bad Trump things fall. I mean, if she literally stood there for 90 minutes and said, I really don't intend to answer that question, and just did that for 90 minutes, I mean, I think she still would come out ahead. I mean, just basically say, I'm physically here, so you can't say I didn't show up, but I'm just not going to talk to you. You're not worth engaging with.
She just had a magazine and I pass.
yeah, really, just start flipping, take a call,
Right. Be playing some Twitter game, like some phone game. She'll be like, hold on, I have a
she
free...
just sit there and live tweet a debate she's not participating in.
Yeah.
We'll check back next week and see if the debates were on in the 7-second delay. Thanks for tuning in. Keep reading Latest.com.